As I noted at the tail end of the previous lesson, how can we verify that the age provided for this person is valid? Meaning they need to be over 0 years, or it can't be negative. Or maybe you have an adult person. Maybe your object is like this, var adult. Well, in that case, you might want to validate that the age is 18 or older. Let's go back to person though and just make sure that it's a positive number. To validate a model, we're going to use the validate method. So validate is function. And I'm going to give a little spacing here. I always prefer spaces between my methods. Now, the validate method will automatically be triggered by Backbone when you set an attribute. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to pass the entire object. So remember in the previous lesson when we ran our person.toJSON and we got an object of all of the attributes right here? Well, that is what's going to be passed to the validate method. Let's take a look. Let's console.log attributes and figure out when this is triggered. Back to Chrome. I'm going to reload the page and open up Chrome Developer Tools. Once again, we're going to set a new person. And now notice that our validate method was not triggered. Okay, well that's important to know. When we pass in our attributes, when we instantiate person, the validate method is never called. But now let's see, let's try person.getName. Will that trigger it? No, because we're not validating anything. We only are validating when we are setting an attribute. Person.setAge to be -27. Now notice that we get this logged to the console, proving that the validate method was called. And notice that it did pass through an object with my name, age, and occupation. So it just passes through the model's data. So now we can validate this by saying if attributes.age is less than 0. In that case, we know something was wrong because it's impossible to be 0 or a negative age. So if that's the case, we're simply going to return a string. We're going to return age must be positive. Stupid. Now let's try this again, and this may confuse you. We're going to create our person. We're going to set an age of -27, but notice that the string was not returned. A Boolean was returned, and this is really important. So we know now that if we try to set an attribute or a property and it fails the validation, then false will be returned. Let's try setting something that'll make it pass. We'll set it to +27, and notice that in that case, our person instance will be returned. But that's good to know. If it fails, false is going to be returned. Interesting. Well, how do we fetch that error then? Well, we can do that by listening for an error. So let's do person.on. We're going to listen for the error event. And when that runs, it's going to accept the model. And it's also going to accept the error message. So all we're saying here is if Backbone triggers an error, in that case, let's just console.log the error message. All right, now we have that set up. Let's once again try to set an invalid attribute. Set age to -50. And now I want you to note that we did get age must be positive, stupid. And we also get false returned. But what's more important is if I say person.toJSON, it will not have updated that object. So this is how we can protect our data so it's not being spoiled, for lack of better words. Person.setAge to -100. We're going to get an error message, age must be positive. And once again, person.toJSON, we have not updated the value of age. What if we want to set the name, person.setName, to an empty string? Well, once again, person.toJSON, now we have updated the name to an empty string. And we know that no person can have a name of empty string. So let's validate that. Let's say if attributes.name, and I'm just going to say if not, if that's a falsy value, then we're going to return every person must have a name. And we'll continue to be rude. All right, so now let's try this again. We're going to create our new person. We're going to set its name to John, and we're going to run person.toJSON to see what we get. And as we would expect, we have updated our person's name to John. But now we're going to set the name to an empty string, and what we're going to get is false returned. If we run person.toJSON again, now name will continue to be John. So this is the basics of how you can provide validation for your models. And the basic idea is, before we ever allow anyone to update these attributes, they first have to be run through our validation. And as long as the validation passes, then the property will be set. But if it does not pass, then the value will not be set and false will be returned, at which point you can then hook into it if you need to grab those error messages. And that'll do it for this video. When you're ready, move on to lesson number 5.